Got this guy Cenk to debate Ann Coulter. Got this guy Ben Shapiro.
Are you ready for debate night at Politicon 2017? All right. Well, let's bring them out, the people you've been waiting for. First, editor-in-chief of the Daily Wire and host of the Ben Shapiro Show, Ben Shapiro. All right. All right. And founder and host of the Young Turks, Cenk Uygur.
So I'm wildly disappointed with the entire party. The fact is that we were promised a full repeal of Obamacare. They did not even attempt to pursue a full repeal of Obamacare. And the fact of the matter is that there's a significant gap inside the Republican Party about whether this should even happen or not. There are people who believe that the Obamacare regulations are an affirmative good. There was an attempt to basically leave all the Obamacare regulations in place and just remove the funding mechanism, which would have led to the exacerbation of the death spiral. The truth about healthcare is this. There are three qualities of healthcare that you can have. You can have affordability, you can have universality, or you can have quality. And you can have two of those three things, but not all three. Right? You can have universality, affordability, or quality. Two of those three things you can have. And one of the things that's happened with Obamacare is that you've gotten closer to universality, but you haven't gotten any closer to either affordability or quality. And the Republican Party seems to be falling into the trap of basically just copying what the Democrats do, except being worse at it. What they actually need to do is relieve the regulatory burden that is driving up the cost of health care, and they need to stop acting as though insurance companies' jobs is actually just to reimburse people for their bad health. If you join up with an insurance company and your health sucks to begin with, you're going to pay more because it's an insurance company, not a charity. And that doesn't mean that we can't have Now, that doesn't mean that we can't have some form of backup for people who have pre-existing conditions. I would hope that the social fabric would help fill that in. This is why I'm a big believer in charity and churches and synagogues filling that gap. But what we can't do is suggest, as the Bernie Sanders left does, that health care is an inalienable right, and therefore you can put a gun to my wife's head, she's a doctor, and you can force her to provide care at any cost you want to pay. You can't do that and hope to increase the supply of health care. Health insurance is not health care. They're not the same thing. And anybody who tells you differently is lying or trying to sell you something.
Great. Before I do that, first of all, welcome to the Thunderdome.
All right. Let's hear him speak.
Yes. Guys, wait till he does something. I mean,
in all seriousness, the reason that I kid around about that is that I really want to make sure that Ben's opinions are heard and my opinions are heard, and that this is an exchange of ideas. And believe it or not, there are some things that we do agree on, and what we won't be discussing those tonight. So on the issue of healthcare, let's get going. So the Democratic Party is incredibly proud that they defeated a bill that had 17% approval rating. It's a low bar. And I'm glad they held. The Republicans have a comical position, which is that why didn't the Democrats help us defeat Obamacare? Well, that's kind of because that was their idea. And why in God's green earth would they help you defeat their own plan? Now, is Obamacare enough? Not nearly. And there are a number of issues that we had as progressives with it, including lack of price controls. You left it in the hands of private insurance, and of course, them being corporations, which Ben kind of alluded to there, they're going to want to make money. And so that is very, very normal. And so I don't think that that was the right way to approach it, and it was originally a Heritage Foundation plan to begin with. So I believe that the right approach, and the one that Democrats should pursue next, although they probably won't, is Medicare for all. So real quick, let me explain why. Medicare polls at 77% and actually accomplishes the three things that Ben talked about. It's universal coverage, it is affordable, and actually gives you good insurance. That's why it polls at 77%. And Medicare for all now polling at 60%. Federally funded health insurance for everybody polling at 61%. So I tell to my Democratic friends, you might want to try something that's popular for a change. So, and finally, like on the idea that, hey, listen, everybody can't get health care. Well, this is not like furniture, which sometimes you allude to, Ben. You could have good furniture, bad furniture. I've had it all, right? That's optional. If you don't have good health care, you die. And so I view it as not something that capitalism should deal with, and I believe in capitalism, and I think they make great sneakers. But something that is about equality of opportunity. And you cannot have equality of opportunity if you're dead. So Medicare for all.
The problem with Medicare for all is that when people say that it's affordable, this isn't affordable to the person who has the Medicare. It is not affordable to the country. In fact, it is so unaffordable to the country that the state of California was a nut job leftist state, just refused to even pass Medicare for all because it would have immediately doubled the debt. As far as the idea that medical care is a right, but it's not actually a good or a service, this is a way to make things less plentiful. If you declare things rights, but you don't actually incentivize the creation of those things, you don't get more of them. So the South African Constitution has right in there that healthcare is a right, that housing is a right. The fact is that you don't have good housing or healthcare in South Africa because just declaring things rights does not make them appear. What makes more things appear is a market-based system that creates more doctors, that creates more medical care, that creates more incentive for people to join up. So my wife is a doctor. That means she has to go through 1,000 years of medical training, and we have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to make her a doctor. The idea that you're going to have the government come in and then dictate the sort of care that she should provide to each particular patient, and then dictate how much she should be paid for that care, is going to lead to a decrease in the number of people who are going into the medical industry, which decreases the level of care overall. This is why I say that it is better to treat things as goods than as rights, because declaring something a right just means that you have the right to steal it from me. But declaring something a good means that you get a market process that leads to lower prices and better care over time. And the big problem we've had before Obamacare is that it was already treated quasi as a right. You had it heavily regulated on the state level. It is continually heavily regulated. The idea there's a completely unregulated market is absolute nonsense. The reason that you have employer-based health insurance in the first place was as a response to wage and price controls placed in the aftermath of World War II, and employers began giving health insurance as an actual good, right? They gave it as an actual incentive to their employees. If you had an actual individual-based health insurance market, you bought it just like you bought your car insurance, you would see more and better health care for everyone.
All right. So, Ben, I don't want to steal health insurance from you. I want you to be healthy. That's why I want Medicare for all.
You just want to take my money and my wife's services.
So, Republicans frame taxes as stealing. That's preposterous. So if we don't have taxes, well, we can't do all the things that we want to do as a community. Now, there are some things that we just talked about that we don't want to do as a community, we want to do as individuals. In fact, the things that we want to do as individuals are much greater. That's why we're a mixed economy, but largely capitalist. And I agree with that. And I run a small business myself, getting larger every day. So, but there are some things that the government should do. They should do the military, cops, roads, bridges, and yes, education and health care. That's because, conservatives seem a little confused about how healthcare works. Paul Ryan had a whole press conference about this. Ben a little bit alluded to it there. They're like, oh my God, it turns out the healthy subsidize the sick. Yeah, that's insurance. That's how it works. It's like the people with that are not getting into accidents are subsidizing the accidents. Yes, that's car insurance. That's how insurance works. And yes, taxes work in that we all decide we're going to do X, but we're not going to do Y. And I think it is fair for society to say that yes, we are going to do health care for everybody. Everybody. We're not going to leave 20 million people uninsured. We're not going to leave 30 million people uninsured. That's not what we do in a civilized society. And from time to time, the attack against Medicare, they say, oh, it's an entitlement. Yeah, we paid for it through payroll taxes our whole lives. You're goddamn right we're entitled to it, because we paid for it. We paid for it. And so when you take out the middlemen of the insurance companies that put their profits in there, that put their marketing in there, that put their lobbyist money in there, that means more savings for Americans. And so finally, the idea that it can't be done is preposterous, since every other Western developed country does some version of single payer. It obviously can be done, and it is done at lower rates and better coverage.